Today is Friday, March 7th. We'll tell you about President Trump's turnaround on his own tariffs and how he's taking some power away from top cost cutter Elon Musk. Plus, what to know about a new Bitcoin reserve, how a spacecraft explosion caused some flight delays, and why the world is invested in a couple of birds building a family. Those stories and even more news to know coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. President Trump is putting the trade war in reverse, largely lifting the tariffs he imposed on Canada and Mexico earlier this week. Trump now says everything covered by a North American trade pact will stay tariff-free at least until next month. To be clear, there is still a 10% tariff on energy products, and next week, 25% tariffs are set to go into effect on imports of steel and aluminum. Pretty much everything else, though, does fall under the exemption for now. The White House says things will change on April 2nd. At that point, across-the-board tariffs could impact all U.S. trading partners, including Mexico and Canada, if they don't meet the White House demands on the borders. For now, President Trump seems to have very different relationships with the leaders of Mexico and Canada. When he announced the decision to postpone tariffs, he said he did so out of respect for Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, who he has said he likes very much. And in return, Sheinbaum seems to be holding off on retaliating against the U.S., which Mexico was planning to do this weekend. With Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, things are different. He's called the tariffs dumb, and Trump's new Treasury Secretary called Trudeau a numbskull for trying to talk tough. A call between Trump and Trudeau earlier this week was, as Trudeau put it, colorful. Canada had already retaliated against the U.S. earlier this week by adding tariffs on more than $20 billion of American goods like orange juice, peanut butter, coffee, appliances, and paper products. And those ones are staying in place for now. Canada did suspend the next wave of tariffs that were scheduled to impact American vehicles, meat, and produce. Still, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he expects his country to be in a trade war with the U.S. for the foreseeable future. President Trump is pushing his cabinet to have more sway in job cuts, taking some of the power away from advisor Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency, aka DOGE. The president told cabinet secretaries yesterday it's best if they take the lead on personnel decisions to make sure the best and most productive people stay on. But he also said Musk will be keeping an eye on their decisions and will step in if they don't do enough to address excess bloat, as he called it. Cabinet officials will have to meet with DOGE every 2 weeks until the White House is done with its efforts to revamp the federal workforce. This comes after DOGE has already made massive cuts to personnel and programs, but has also made some mistakes and has had to reverse some of the cuts. And also comes in the face of growing pushback. One of the most open acts of defiance was seen at the U.S. African Development Foundation that encourages investment in Africa. DOGE has been trying to effectively shut it down since President Trump called it unnecessary. But this week, workers there refused to let the DOGE team in until they got an escort from federal marshals. Barely an hour after the team arrived, the foundation's president sued, hoping to stop the takeover. The White House now seems even more convinced he needs to go. We've mentioned the Trump administration has already frozen almost all American foreign aid and cut thousands of USAID staff and contractors. And the cuts certainly won't end here. Even more drama played out on the floor of the U.S. House as lawmakers voted to punish one of their colleagues. The House voted to censure Democratic Congressman Al Green, who got kicked out of President Trump's address to Congress for interrupting the speech and refusing to sit down despite warnings. 10 Democrats voted with Republicans, saying they have respect for the institution of the presidency, though Green says he was just punished for standing up to Trump. And some of his supporters point out how he's not the first member of Congress to interrupt a president, that former President Biden was heckled in 3 different State of the Union addresses by Republicans. After this censure vote, Green and some of his allies started singing the civil rights anthem, "We Shall Overcome." The Republican side called to order, and then a screaming match broke out. Speaker Mike Johnson called it a, quote, sad day for our institution. To be clear, a censure formally condemns Green's actions, but it doesn't actually carry a real penalty. Now, some conservative lawmakers want to go a step further and take away Green's committee assignments. Republicans expect it to be put to a vote next week. Here's your yearly reminder. Daylight saving time is coming for most Americans this weekend. Clocks will jump forward by 1 hour early Sunday morning. And yes, that means you may lose an hour of sleep. Then the days will start to feel longer since the sun will be setting later in the evening. Of course, daylight saving time is always a bit controversial. A bipartisan bill that would get rid of time changes actually passed unanimously in the Senate a couple of years ago. But it died in the House because lawmakers couldn't agree on whether to keep standard time or daylight saving time. And President Trump said yesterday, it's hard to get excited about changing things when people can't agree on how they want to change it. So for now, Americans will have to keep changing their clocks and adjusting twice a year, everywhere except Hawaii and Arizona. More news still ahead, but first, thanks to our sponsor. Wildgrain is the first bake-from-frozen subscription box for artisanal breads, pastries, and pastas. Wildgrain's boxes are fully customizable to your taste and dietary restrictions, so they even have a gluten-free box and a plant-based box. But best of all, they take the hassle out of baking, since all the items bake from frozen in just 25 minutes or less with no mess or cleanup. For example, I threw a loaf of sourdough bread from Wildgrain in the oven the other night while I made some broccoli cheddar soup, and the bread was ready so quickly and so easily, and it made the meal 10 times better. It was high quality, fresh, delicious bread, and it was an absolute hit with my family. So are you ready to bring all your favorite carbs right to your doorstep? Be sure to check out Wildgrain so you can begin building your own box of artisanal breads, pastas, and pastries. And for a limited time, Wildgrain is offering our listeners $30 off the first box, plus free croissants in every box. I love these croissants. When you go to wildgrain.com/newsworthy to start your subscription. You heard me, free croissants in every box and $30 off your first box when you go to wildgrain.com/newsworthy. That's wildgrain.com/newsworthy, or you can use the promo code newsworthy at checkout. Now back to the news. In what's being called a major policy shift, the U.S. now has a strategic Bitcoin reserve. President Trump established it with an executive order yesterday. He says the reserve will be built up with Bitcoin seized from criminal and civil forfeiture cases, and then we'll look for other ways to add more Bitcoin without impacting taxpayers. The Treasury Department will also have a separate stockpile for other confiscated cryptocurrencies. That marks a change, since typically the U.S. government sells seized assets and uses the profits to compensate victims and fund law enforcement efforts. But the White House says this strategy will maximize the value of the holdings. Some investors are seeing the news as a sign Bitcoin is here to stay. Another sign, the White House is holding its first ever crypto summit today. More than 24 industry leaders will be there, as well as the so-called White House crypto czar. More crypto-friendly executive orders are expected to be announced. On the Border is the latest restaurant chain to file for bankruptcy protection, just a few weeks after closing dozens of restaurants. On the Border gave a few reasons why it filed for Chapter 11 protection. For example, it says people aren't going out to eat as much anymore, and minimum wage increases have driven up costs. Still, the company is not going out of business. 60 locations in 18 states will stay open during the bankruptcy proceedings. Of course, On the Border is not the only restaurant chain that's in trouble. TGI Fridays, Denny's, Ruby Tuesday, Rubio's Coastal Grill, and Red Lobster have all filed for bankruptcy protection in recent years. Hooters might also join the list as it tries to restructure and tackle debt, though some celebrities like Kelly Clarkson and NBA stars Devin Booker and Kevin Durant are throwing their support behind that chain. Meanwhile, other restaurant chains are getting creative with new strategies to stay afloat. For example, the owner of Applebee's and IHOP is opening fusion locations of the two restaurants and offering more value meals. For the second time in 2 months, SpaceX attempted to launch the most powerful rocket ever built. And for the second time in 2 months, it exploded. But don't worry, there were no astronauts on board. And just like last time, SpaceX did successfully return the booster portion of the rocket, so it wasn't considered a total bust. Debris from the latest rocket, though, caused flight delays in cities across the U.S. yesterday, from Florida to Pennsylvania. But things are all clear now. The FAA is grounding Starship until SpaceX finishes investigating yesterday's issues. Still, NASA is planning to eventually use a version of the Starship to take astronauts to the surface of the moon and one day, potentially, Mars. By the way, 2 landers built by separate Texas-based companies did touch down on the moon this week. One landed softly and safely, which was the first smooth moon landing for any private spacecraft. The other may have tipped on its side, but scientists are still working to clarify and see if any of the experiments on board can still go forward. Both spacecrafts are part of a NASA program to support private companies to develop moon landers, another key part of NASA's goal to return astronauts to the moon. Tens of thousands of people are headed to Austin, Texas this weekend for South by Southwest. The 10-day festival and conference has been around for nearly 4 decades now. It's seen as a launch pad for startups to get investments, indie bands to attract major labels, and filmmakers to premiere projects. This year, on the film side of things, there are new releases like Another Simple Favor starring Blake Lively and Anna Kendrick. There's also Holland starring Nicole Kidman and Seen and Heard from executive producer Issa Rae. Apple TV's highly anticipated show, The Studio, starring Seth Rogen, will also premiere there tonight. The music lineup includes Benson Boone, Band of Horses, and Genuine. There's a tech program featuring 2 days about quantum computing, and the conference lineup will include events with people like former First Lady Michelle Obama and tech entrepreneur Brian Johnson. South by Southwest runs through next Saturday. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Feel Good Friday, when we bring you one extra feel-good or positive news story before the weekend. But first, I want to talk about our sponsor, Quince. I am over the days of buying something super cheap to wear just once or twice, and then it either falls apart or it's just not trendy anymore. Now, I prefer quality, even a little luxury, though I still need it to be affordable. And that's where Quince comes in. Quince offers a range of high-quality items at prices within reach, like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from just $50, washable silk tops and dresses, organic cotton sweaters, and 14-karat gold jewelry. The best part? All Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. By partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. So I love that. My most recent get was a wool quarter zip pullover. I adore how soft and warm this sweater is, and I so appreciate that I can throw it on for a quick casual look or dress it up to be a bit more sophisticated. Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/newsworthy for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/newsworthy to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/newsworthy. Now back to Feel Good Friday. A couple of bald eagles have been warming hearts all around the world. Their names are Jackie and Shadow, and their nest in Big Bear, California, has been broadcast live daily to thousands of devoted viewers who for years have been excited to see the birds become parents. This week, their wait was over. Eggs finally hatched. This was especially exciting since the eagles have gone through several public hardships. A couple of years ago, Jackie and Shadow's eggs were eaten by ravens. Then last year, heavy snow piled on their nest during brutal storms, and the eggs inside never hatched. Well, then this week, at least 2 chicks sprung out of their eggs, and a third just started breaking free yesterday, and that process could take a few days. But already biologists say the first 2 are doing well. They've been eating, getting stronger, and behaving like normal eagle siblings, all in front of the camera. Fans are still watching as the 2 eagles look after their new chicks. If you want to watch the eagle nest cam for yourself, we've added a link in today's episode notes. And pretty soon, 3rd graders will vote on what to name them. We'll be back tomorrow on International Women's Day talking about women who changed the course of history and the lessons we can learn from them today. And that's on our special edition Saturday episode. Then join us again Monday for another Daily News Roundup. For now, thank you so much for listening and have a great weekend.